Well, we saw, I think any Laker fan saw it coming. Like, you got to win in Memphis. Energy was low early, and this team isn't, they're not Sacramento young. They're not, they're one of those teams, like, they got to be engaged. Like, because LeBron, over the last 2 or 3 years, really lets the game come to him. The first quarters for LeBron, it's like a boxer in the first 3 rounds. Like, he feels the game out, right? He's basically hoping somebody else does the heavy lifting early. He's conserving energy. So when Anthony Davis can't hit shots and LeBron's sort of working his way into a game and it's like, oh, we trail by 15. Okay. Like, that's when the game became very quickly.
Yeah, you put it perfectly. Every Laker fan saw this coming. This has been, this Lakers season has been such a bizarre journey, Colin, because everyone's going to focus on the fact that they've been really good since the deadline. And they have. And so good that they've deserved the attention that they've received in a way that they may not have deserved the attention they received in the previous year and a half. It was more of just like everyone watching the ship crash and burn, But there have been 2 really interesting stretches this season that I think are very, very under discussed, I should say, to get the Lakers where they were. There's a stretch where LeBron James missed extended time and Anthony Davis carried the team. Actually, 2 stretches like that, but the big one, the foot issue towards the end of the year. And then there was the stretch where Anthony Davis missed a ton of time and LeBron James stepped in. And in each of those stretches, LeBron and AD, the one that was available, put forth incredibly desperate basketball, that playing at the absolute top of their games to drag the team to wins, just to float things long enough until the trade deadline could happen or until LeBron James could return, right? And every single time there has been a return, they've collectively exhaled and they don't play well as the favorite, is basically what I'm saying. When LeBron James came back, they immediately lost to Chicago because they didn't think they had to play as hard as they did. They lost that desperation. Yeah. And this game, textbook, they go out there in game 1, they dominate that game, and it was... I heard a lot of people saying it wasn't as close as it looked. I agree, but did anybody think Memphis was winning game 1, or did it feel like the Lakers controlled it throughout? They controlled it throughout, right? But then after that game, they flipped from being a slight underdog in the series to being a slight favorite in the series. Then John Morant's out. And LeBron James and Anthony Davis are 2 players that like to do the absolute bare minimum to win basketball games. They tried that tonight, and that's a young, scrappy Memphis team that's always played super well at home. They played super physical and really bothered the Lakers, particularly around the rim, and they got a big win.
Well, the other thing is they're a better defensive team, Memphis is, when Jaw's not on the floor. And the ball moves better. And I've said this before. I said it today on FS1. I said flashy point guards are like sports cars. They're not built for bad weather or a trip cross country, but God, they're fun. Really fun. Trae Young. I'll throw even Steph Curry in. Steph Curry, Trae Young, John Wall, John Morant, Derrick Rose. They are players that get exposed defensively. They're usually a little, they're all a little thin, a little light. Westbrook was more stocky, but again, he plays defense when he feels like it. But when you get these Ja Morant type players, they're exhilarating, and ball movement slows down. You kind of stare. You kind of watch Derrick Rose perform, watch John Wall, and they're not great. They give you so much energy on the offensive end. They don't give you a ton on the defensive end. Now, Steph Curry and the Warriors, they've built a team. Draymond, Clay, when he was a great defender. They bring in Gary Payton. They see his weaknesses and they build around him. But when I watch Memphis, and I've seen this now 3 years, Tyus Jones plays better defense. I've seen this the last, 10 times that he's played. They're a better defensive team. He's not a great scorer, but the forwards and the wings move the ball really, really, really well. And by the way, I remember John Wall years ago missing games for the Wizards, where they won like 9 or 10 straight. It doesn't mean Wall's not great. But, everybody then feels like when the flashy point guard's out, hey, I'm going to get touches tonight. Like, I'm going to be included in this game plan. And you really want to play well, showing the coaches, okay, when the guy comes back, I want touches. And I think Memphis tonight played a lot of energy, moved it really, really well. Everybody, just the ball moves better. And it's not a knock on John Morant. He's exhilarating. But I see this sometimes even with the Warriors. Like, sometimes if Draymond's not setting screens, it's a lot of guys watching Steph do his, Harlem Globetrotter ball movement flying around. And I looked at Memphis tonight and I'm like, they're a good team without Ja. They're a different team, but they're a good team without him.
The way you broke it down is perfect. Like there's a baseline kind of like fundamental list of things that if you do well as a basketball team, you have a chance to win no matter what, right? Like even without a top tier superstar, if you can protect the rim really well, if you compete really hard in all of the effort and energy parts of the game, like sliding your feet defensively on the perimeter, beating guys to the rim on help situations, crashing the offensive glass, crashing the defensive glass, just by playing super hard and having a couple of baseline pieces that you need, you can win in the NBA, especially since a lot of these NBA players are good. Like we spend a lot of time talking about role players and their shortcomings, but a lot of these guys were all conference dudes in college and guys who averaged 25, 30 points a game in high school. So if you give them closeout situations, even against good NBA defenses, they're going to be able to score. And so if you don't guard the ball and you give up dribble penetration and guys are attacking closeouts all night long, they're going to score. That's why, like, honestly, from a schematic standpoint, watching this game, I remain extremely confident that the Lakers are going to win the series. The only thing that really stood out to me schematically was the Jared Vanderbilt problem. And it's twofold. Half of it is Jared Vanderbilt and the fact that he's such a non-threat offensively that Memphis can stick Jaren Jackson on him and just muck everything up underneath the basket. But the flip side of it is Rui Hachimura is ascending in front of us. This is something that we've seen the two 20 plus point games in this series, but it actually extends backwards a few weeks now. His initial tenure with the Lakers went a little bit rough. He got moved to the bench after the trade, but Phil Handy's been working with him relentlessly before games and in practice on polishing up some things in his skill set. He's been working with Darvin Ham really hard to find little areas of the game where he can impact the game defensively. He's become kind of a sneaky, solid help defender under the rim, blocking shots, grabbing contested rebounds.
He's big.
He's big. He's huge. They're going to slide him into that starting lineup at some point in this playoff run, maybe even in game 3 of this series. And I think they're going to cut way back on Jared Vanderbilt's minutes. That was really the only schematic thing that bothered me, or concerned me, I should say, about the Lakers.
Yeah, but I will say they didn't play well, started slow, were on the road. AD didn't give you much offensively, and they were in the game with 2 minutes to go. I mean, when the Knicks play poorly, they get rolled. Miami, not even Giannis on the floor tonight's getting rolled. Lakers were on the road without or with Ja Morant. Memphis is a very upper echelon team, and they competed, and they really didn't play their best basketball. It was like, since the trade, I think they're a much more competitive team. I think they have more options. I watched the night and I thought very early, it's like, it's not going to be their night. It's not going to be their night. But they competed. They hung in the game. It wasn't a blowout. They were, there was a little brief moment with about 4.5, 5 left. You're like, oh, okay, it's 6. So my takeaway is go back home, win both games. Ja's not going to be playing much in this series. And the faster you can close it out, the better, because this is LeBron James is old, and you can see it. Like, he can't go 7-game series, or they'll pay for it next series.
Yeah, I think the way you broke it down is perfect. Like there's a competitiveness that you'd like to see when a team loses that shows them that they're just a victim of, or not, victim's not even the right word, but just shows them that this is a natural ebb and flow in the series. From the point that the Grizzlies went up 66-46, they were up 20. This was the early third quarter. I thought the Lakers really controlled the rest of that game. They just were a little bit too far away, especially with D'Angelo Russell being incapable of making a shot. Anthony Davis was missing everything around the basket.
Yeah.
They just didn't quite have the offensive firepower tonight to make up for the hole that they dug themselves. But once they locked in defensively in that second half, they got plenty of stops. Now, the problem is, and you just said this, and this is so important, this particular Lakers team, rest is going to be key for them. And ending this series quickly is so important because there will be long series ahead. The next series against Sacramento or Golden State, probably a longer series because the Lakers struggle with transition defense, and the way that they run their coverages is going to leave some things open for the Kings guards and the Warriors guards. In the conference finals against a team like Phoenix or the Clippers or Denver, they're going to be in for a long series. Whoever comes out of the West, That's a 6 or 7 game series. So if they could buy little tiny chunks of like 3 or 4 days off here or there for LeBron and Anthony Davis to rest, ending this series in 5 would go a long way towards that. So Colin, everyone was accusing us of backing up our volume guy, which I think is ridiculous because it's just I don't know what's gotten into everybody, Colin, because I feel like this is the most reasonable opinion in the world, and everyone's calling me immoral. You know how it goes. But I could see the case for the ejection. Now I disagreed with it, but I could see the case, and the case was Draymond's history. Fair. I thought the decision to suspend him was completely outrageous. Where did you land on that?
Well, I had a lot of thoughts on it. The reality is, if I went up and punched you and you punched me back and you knocked me out and I just grazed you, you could say, well, he started it. And that's a real defense. If you broke into my house and I shot you and you had a terrible injury, and maybe I didn't need to be as violent against you, I would say he broke into my house, right? Sabonis got a technical and initiated the circus. Draymond pulling out then added to it. But that's a real defense, which is, he swung first, or he broke in, or he grabbed my leg. So to me, that's not why they threw him out for the next game. I believe at my core, because Sabonis, started it and played the remaining 7.5 minutes. He was fine. And, again, if there would have been an injury, then there's a different component. But I think, and I don't blame Adam Silver for this, deep in the DNA of the NBA, the malice at the Palace was their darkest moment. And when Draymond got up as a road player and started taunting the crowd, and Adam Silver's in the building, I think that's a non-starter. If you're at Chase Center, it's different. But if you're on the road, Adam's there, he hears those fans. He sees the double birds. It's like, no way. We're not going there. That, even though I defended the players in Malice of the Palace, because if you went back and looked at the people and the fans involved, many of them had criminal records. They were just there to be trouble. I defended Ron Artest. I defended the players because I would have been terrified to be in an opposing arena. But it does matter what arena it is. You can't do that on the road in a hostile playoff environment. Jason, you just can't do it. There's the old saying, you can't yell fire in a crowded theater. You can't. So I think Silver being there, and because when Draymond's doing that, Adam's hearing those fans. And he's seeing those double birds, and he's like, I'm not going there. Repercussions. And again, Draymond's a veteran. He's not a rookie. Like, you could see a rookie losing their shit. Seriously, a 19-year-old kid gets worked up. This is a wise NBA sage. Draymond's been in these wars forever. So I think it's like resume, road, inciting, because I'm with you. If you do something first, you do have a right. A cheap shot to me, you do have a right to cheap shot back, and that would have easily been 2 technicals, keep playing. But that crowd and that, even somebody said it today on my show, I forget who it was, but it may have been Sam Amick. He just said, if he just run through the tunnel, it would have felt different. Just, I'm out. It was like 90 seconds of, come on, you want a piece of me? I didn't like it.
Well, there are things that are debatable about this, and there are things that are not debatable. Like, the debatable side of it is, should he have been suspended? Sure. We can go back and forth about that. Here's what's not debatable. Draymond brought this on himself and his team. That goes, regardless of what the decision-making process was, the risk was willingly took on by Draymond with his behavior. And especially what you're talking about after the timeout, because again, like, and I think it's a complicated topic, and I know you've talked about this a little bit on your show lately, but like the dynamic between the fans and players is super complicated because like you're heated, you're super competitive, and you're riled up, and now some dude's saying some wildly disrespectful stuff to you like 20 feet away. And there's really like this barrier between you that extends beyond the distance. It's also like Adam Silver standing there between you because it could literally mess up your entire season and everything that you and your team are trying to build towards. But again, like there's a difference between like I think I personally would not have suspended him. That said, that's a debate. That's a fair debate. There's no question that Draymond brought it on himself, at least through his decision-making process and knowing what kind of history he had. Now, with this series gets really interesting from here. I don't think it's over, Colin, and I'm still pretty confident that Golden State's going to win. I know it sounds crazy, but a couple of different things. They kind of started to figure out some stuff in Game 2 that I believe might have led them to a victory had Draymond been able to stay in the game. When Andrew Wiggins is on the floor and when Gary Payton is on the floor, they have straightforward matchups for Fox and Monk, and they're actually doing a decent job containing him there. Then they have to go to pick and roll to get rid of the on-ball defender, and Draymond is blowing all of that stuff up as the screen defender. At the end of the game, they had to go to Looney, and then they went to pick and roll, and Looney couldn't stop anybody at the rim. So that ended up being the problem. But functionally from the lineup, you can kind of see the two teams finding their five that works. The Kings are going with Davion Mitchell because he can guard Steph credibly, right? And then they're going with Malik Monk and De'Aaron Fox with Harrison Barnes and Domantas Sabonis. With the Warriors, it's Draymond with Andrew Wiggins, and then Gary Payton, Steph, and Clay. That's where they've got their lineups that are working. That's where these two teams are going to go down with the ship. If the Warriors can survive Game 3, which is totally possible with how well they play in front of their home crowd, even without Draymond, especially against a Kings team that can not be overly physical sometimes. If they can survive Game 3, Draymond comes back for Game 4. I believe they will win that game. On the road in Game 5, as long as they can stay in it long enough to get to their core lineup at the end, I think they have a really good chance to win this series. As bad as Golden State was on the road in Sacramento, expect Sacramento to look just as bad in Golden State, in my opinion.
Well, what I worry about without Draymond, he's a great passer on the offensive end. He's also a great screen setter, and now, they have plenty of smart players, but he does add an intellect. He's just got a real good sense. I mean, it's all this sort of intellectual bandwidth the Celtics play with. When you got four guys who are on the floor for 6 years, like the Celtics passing is excellent. Mm-hmm. Whereas Atlanta's got a new GM, a new coach, a new system. I mean, it's just a bunch of new parts. And I think when I watch the Warriors with Draymond, Steph, Clay on the floor, man, there are times it's just they can really read each other's minds. And that's the kind of capital that load management eats away at. It's what, I mean, we've talked about this. It's why the Clippers sometimes in a half-court set are painful to watch. There's no play together. So if they can get through this game, I agree with you. But, man, sometimes without Draymond, the passing's not as crisp, the ball movement's not quite as good. You know, Clay's not a great ball handler, and now he's not a great defender. So you get two different versions of Clay. There's catch and shoot, and he's hot at home Clay. Great. And then there's on the road, struggling handling the ball, guys blowing by him. You know, you used to kind of know with Clay that if he wasn't on, you got a great defender. Now when he's not on, you got sometimes a suboptimal ball handler and defender. So his game doesn't necessarily, you'd think because he's a catch and shoot guy, his game would age well. But he's got to play better. He and Jordan Poole have got to help Steph. Jordan Poole's been awful in the series. Awful.
I agree. The Draymond thing is certainly a threat, and this is where I fundamentally disagree with the suspension. Like, make the Kings go earn the damn series. Make them go beat Golden State in Golden State. Make them beat them with Draymond. Like, especially I'm getting on my soapbox again. I didn't like that suspension at all. Like, because now if the Kings win the series, it's going to feel a little cheap.
You know,
but
Jason,
go ahead.
I've always felt I will always give an athlete a pass in the moment. Tom Brady yelling at a coach, Peyton Manning barking. I'll always give an athlete, they can leave their body. It's an out-of-body experience emotionally. I mean, your testosterone's going. So the Draymond kick, it's like, I get it. That's his style. He's the bouncer at the nightclub. He's a tough guy. It's okay, I've been ejected. Now I'm going to go and taunt the crowd. Come on, you're a mid-30-year-old player. Like I have a right to be mad if I'm on the air and somebody doesn't roll the tape and I'm barking. But 3 minutes later, I've got to go, okay, we have a show to do. Take a deep breath, get over yourself, let's do the show. So that part, I'll defend Draymond in the moment. Guy grabs your foot, you stomp him back. I'll defend him forever on that. But you got to know better as a 34, 35-year-old guy on the road to get that crowd riled up. Like, that's just not the play.
I can't argue with anything you're saying, Colin. So I'm going to change my take. As a basketball fan, I'm annoyed that Draymond's not playing in Game 3.
Right.
How about that? we'll just go with that. So I do still think I think that if the Warriors can survive the Draymond suspension in Game 3, I think they still have a very good chance to win the series.
The NBA playoffs are upon us. 20 teams get in, all trying to get that one crown. For last-minute amazing deals to watch your favorite NBA team. It can be the Warriors, it could be the Kings, it could be the Sixers, it could be the Bucks. To get great last-minute deals on amazing tickets, check out Game Time, the fastest-growing ticketing app in the United States. It's called Game Time. It doesn't stop, by the way, with the NBA. They've got NHL tickets, Major League Baseball tickets. By the way, those Major League Baseball games, they last 30 minutes less. So get there early. They've also got concerts and comedy shows. They've got everything at Game Time. Download the Game Time app, and the redeem code is Colin, COLIN. $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Download the Game Time app, enter the code Colin, COLIN, for $20 off. Here we go. NBA playoffs, baseball season just starting here in April, NHL as well. No matter where you live, get out, have some fun this week and this year. Download the Game Time app, last-minute ticket deals, lowest prices guaranteed.
So, Clippers versus Suns. This is the series that I have been most wrong about in my pre-playoffs previews. I expected the Clippers to get swept. They very much did not, as they went into Phoenix and stole Game 1. You know what's interesting about this series, Colin? The numbers coming out of the shot profile stuff does not look good for Phoenix. This is wild. So the Suns have attempted just 19 shots in the restricted area in this series. And the Clippers have attempted 36 or 37. So like almost double. And then in wide open threes, which by NBA.com is factored in as defender at least 6 feet away, the Clippers have also generated about twice as many as the Suns. The reason why the Suns won Game 2 is what's the other shot that's available. So if you're not scoring at the rim and you're not making these kick-out threes to guys that are wide open, it's contested pull-up, off-the-dribble, long jump shots in the mid-range, right? What's crazy is the Suns shot 35% in effective field goal percentage on pull-up jump shots in Game 1, and they lost. They shot 61% effective field goal percentage on pull-up jump shots off the dribble in Game 2, and they won. And so everything for me for the Suns comes down to, can they continue to knock down these tough, contested pull-up jump shots? And I'm just not – I believe they'll make enough to beat the Clippers, but I, after 2 games, feel less confident than ever that the Suns can get out of the conference because they're just not generating enough easy shots.
Well, I feel these are opposite teams. The Clippers have depth but are missing a star. The Suns have stars and are missing depth. And when they made the move to get KD, you had to give up Mikal Bridges. That was the gem. But they gave up 2 other players. And one of those players had 28 the other night for Brooklyn against Philadelphia. And when I watch the Suns, I said this on TV today, they're a guy shy. If I just said, Norman Powell's on the Suns. I'm like, okay, they're a finals team. I almost think they're tentative defensively because they know they can't get into foul trouble. Chris Paul's backup is hurt, and he may not play in Game 3. Booker doesn't really have a backup. They don't really have backups for their stars, and it almost makes them a little tentative defensively, whereas the Clippers have depth, play really hard defensively. Westbrook gets in foul trouble. You can throw in Norman Powell. They've got depth. So I think it makes them play a little more tentative defensively. Monty Williams knows that. We can't go to the bench early. We just can't. And the other thing is, Chris Paul's the one guy that needs a break. And until his backup comes in, who's been out, now he may play in Game 3, but I think that's a big thing. Chris, at this point in his career, needs a spell. And so when I've been watching Chris Paul in the second half, his jumpers are short. His just stuff that went in 3 years ago is just not there. And it was the other night he missed a couple 7-8 footers. I'm like, that was a 70% shot 3 years ago. Just Chris didn't miss those. Mm-hmm. So I feel like to get Kevin Durant, they had to give away a bunch of picks and 3 dudes. If they give away 2, they could be more aggressive on the defensive end. You could rest guys. They're going to have to play Durant and Booker. They're going to have to play them 40 minutes. That's who they are now. That's who they are.
Yeah, I said this before the playoffs, and I still feel very strongly about this. I have no idea what's going to happen with this Suns team, but I do know what's going to happen this summer. They're going to sign somebody, and it's going to be like, hey, listen, do you want to be the starting forward, guaranteed starting spot alongside Kevin Durant, Devin Booker, Chris Paul, DeAndre Ayton? They're going to be able to pitch that position like that using the mid-level exception or whatever contract they decide to offer, and they are going to get some massively underpaid forward that can play on both ends of the floor that wants to just go win a championship next to the two of them. They're going to get 2 or 3 more veteran minimum contracts that kind of follow a similar mold. Right. And they're going to be awesome next year. I feel very strongly about that. This team is kind of playing with house money a little bit because I think the expectations are a little lower on them because of that. The minutes thing is complicated because I'm less concerned about it on the offensive end because workload matters. Splitting a heavy-duty shot creation workload between just Kyrie and LeBron, that can get a little fatiguing, and you need an otherworldly athlete like LeBron to survive that. But all of a sudden, you throw a third guy in there, and it's they're splitting those duties 3 ways. It becomes a little more achievable. The defensive end is where you hit the nail on the head. You can't win a title in the NBA without playing elite defense. You can't play elite defense without committing to devote physical resources to it. And when you devote physical resources to it to the tune of 44 minutes a night, one of 2 things is going to happen. They're either going to not devote the necessary physical resources to it and coast and not reach the defensive ceiling they need to reach, or they're going to pour in the necessary effort for 44 minutes to get stops, and they're going to suffer on the offensive end when they're fatigued. So, that's where it gets difficult. And I don't really have a good answer for them. Kevin Durant famously said this after they lost to the Bucks in that crazy Game 7. The one where his toe was on the line. I don't know if you remember the turnaround jumper.
Yeah, of course,
He said this after the series. He goes, everyone thinks if I was 1 inch further back, we would have won the championship. He's like, that was the second round. He's like, James Harden was playing on a bad hamstring. Kyrie was completely unavailable. I had to create every single shot. He's like, we weren't winning the title that year. It's just too much to ask a guy to do that much without any depth behind him.
Yeah, I think if they get Payne, the backup to Chris Paul, I think if they get him back, I think that helps. There's I don't know what he plays, 18 minutes, 16 minutes. That helps a little bit. But to your point, they'll get a couple of mid-level exemptions, and they'll get a couple of veterans that want to win. Like the Heat did when they went and grabbed Ray Allen. You'll get a guy like that that's man, I just want a title. When David West came to the Warriors, there's a guy out there that can give you 12 really good minutes in the postseason. Jay Crowder's bounced around and become kind of like that guy at the end of his career. Mm-hmm. So, Jay Crowder got moved in that Brooklyn deal. So it's Mikal Bridges, yes, and then you start moving a couple other pieces, and you look up, and it's Cam Johnson dropped almost 30 against Philly, and you're like, They need that so bad. But, interestingly, here's Denver playing tonight and nobody's watching. And we're all just like, oh, God. And it's funny because the NBA knows. By putting them on late at night, they're not going to get East Coast viewers. And I said, Denver reminds me of the Milwaukee team before they won a title. And NBA, they got on the noon NBA TV game during the bubble. Like the league's like, where can we hide them? And I feel like the NBA is doing the same with Denver. They're like, yeah, we know they're good. Let's just wait until they play like the Warriors or Suns so we can get any audience. But I think they're a little like that Milwaukee team. They're kind of sitting in the weeds a little bit. Nobody believes in them. A lot of depth. They're winning in routes. Denver may just come out of this thing after all.
They might. I mean, I will say in our defense, these top seeds, the 1 and 2 versus 7 and 8 matchups, with the exception of the Lakers-Grizzlies, have been so boring. And that Philly Net series has been really boring. That said, I think we'll all be rewarded in the second round because Denver versus Phoenix, whoever comes out of those two Lakers-Warriors series, the Sixers versus Celtics is going to be an all-timer. I think whoever comes out of this Knicks series, whoever comes out of this Knicks series will be an interesting challenge for Milwaukee. I do want, before we get out of here, I wanted to point out two things that I find very interesting. One of which, Colin, I think you might find interesting. Kawhi Leonard has soundly outplayed KD through 2 games. Now it's not over, and Kevin Durant very well. I expect Kevin Durant to play better, and I expect the Suns to win this series. But I think it's been a really interesting indicator of the way playoff basketball changes. And one of the biggest things that I've noticed over the last couple of years, and I wonder if you've noticed the same thing, strength seems to matter so much on this stage for 2 reasons. It's what allows you to play through uncalled fouls, which are occurring on every single possession in the NBA playoffs, like hand checking, grabbing, holding, chucking, all that stuff. Playing through that requires strength. And then it allows you to inflict uncalled offensive fouls, by using your off arm and bumping people off with your shoulder and things along those lines. Kawhi Leonard is getting wherever he wants on the floor in this series. And it's because he's throwing these dudes around like rag dolls. And KD, he's incredibly skilled, and he's going to make shots. He made shots in game 2. Right. I expect him to make shots the rest of the series. I think KD's a better player than Kawhi. But it's so interesting to me that Kawhi's been more impactful so far through 2 games, and I think that strength plays a huge role in it.
Kawhi is a big-time old-school player. I said this years ago, and I believe it. And I haven't heard anybody else say it, so I'll give myself credit. I said, if you'd never seen Michael Jordan play, people say, well, it was Kobe Bryant. And I'd be like, no, it's not. Kobe plus Kawhi Leonard is Michael Jordan. Because Kobe wasn't as strong as Michael. Like, if you look at the size of LeBron's hands and Kawhi's hands, Kobe doesn't have that. Kawhi is country strong. Mike, North Carolina strong, like where you work on your own car, right? Like, that's different. Like, Kobe grows up in Italy. It's Kawhi Leonard. If you gave Kobe Kawhi Leonard's hand size and strength, that's Michael Jordan. That's what Michael always had. Now, Kobe always had better range than Michael and a better ball handler, I think. And I think Kobe could have been a great passer, but he shot. But Kobe never had Michael's raw strength or his hand size to be able to palm the ball in the air. And I think if you gave Kawhi a little better ball handling skills and a little better range on his jumper, a little quicker, slightly twitchier, he's Kobe. Mm-hmm. He's not as twitchy as Kobe without the range, and Kobe's not as strong with the hand size as Kawhi. But Kawhi is... I would have loved... Kawhi's the kind of guy that if Kawhi would have guarded Michael Jordan in his prime, Michael would have been like, yeah, that's a dog. Because Michael, Kawhi is like a little bit like Ron Harper, where because Ron on the Bulls became kind of a third, fourth scorer. Ron was a great scorer in Cleveland with the Clippers. Mm-hmm. Ron didn't have sort of that quite the hand size of Kawhi. But Michael always respected Ron Harper because he knew he basically he gave up his offense to be Michael's partner, right? And be a defensive guy. I said a few years ago, and I believed it, then Kawhi sort of disappeared. Kawhi 4 years ago in the NBA was the best get a bucket, get a stop guy in the league. If you just said, I don't need a three, I need a bucket. About 4 years ago, I thought he was as good as the league had. I need a stop. I definitely felt he was the best in the league. So the only reason we've all kind of sold some stock on Kawhi is he's not available. It's not because his game's not great.
Well, it's the same thing with Anthony Davis. Like we conflate these two issues, but like you don't judge a player by his ceiling. You judge him by his total contributions to your team throughout the entire NBA calendar, and that's where the issue has been. Defensively, I think he's been every bit as good as he's ever been in this series. You can tell he's taken it personally. The last guy I want to shout out, and then we can get out of here. And I don't want to go through the whole, like, fit is part of it. There's no doubt that fit is part of it. The Lakers fit was clunky. That goes without saying. The Clippers fit is much more natural. But Russell Westbrook's commitment to the effort and energy plays in this game, his point of attack defense on both Kevin Durant and Devin Booker, and what he's been doing on the glass. Here's the thing. It's for no reason other than he's finally devoting his entire effort and focus to it, which good for him. But that's why it's finally working out. That said, this is what all Laker fans were screaming for when he was in LA. If he could have just done this, if he could have devoted his resources to the defensive end of the floor, trying to erase a player from the game with his point of attack defense, push the pace, and just make plays for his teammates and rein in his decision-making, he could be this massive positive player for the Lakers. And it just never happened because he didn't want to devote his resources towards those things. That said, as a basketball fan, it has been so much fun watching him in this series and watching him impact winning. I don't know if you saw that play where he tried to deflect the post-entry pass to KD, and he kind of got out of position. And KD took like 2 dribbles to the foul line, and Russ just went flying in off one leg. It just like a humiliating defensive play from Russell Westbrook. Like he's always been capable of that. He could have been the best defensive guard in the history of the league if he wanted to. It just because he's that type of athlete. It's partially impressive to watch him in this series and partially disappointing that it took so long to see it, but shout out to Russell Westbrook.
Well, when he first came to the Lakers, and I remember this during the summer, I said, I don't love him as a player, but with LeBron's age and the brittleness of AD, he'll give you 29 minutes of terror a night. He'll just give you production. He like plays downhill, and for some reason, he was just an awful defensive player for the Lakers. Totally disengaged. With Darvin Ham, it's almost like Darvin pissed him off, asked him to play a certain role, and he's like, I'm out. And then Ty Lue, who was, Ty's confrontational, is like, bro, you got to play defense here. And then he just said, okay, I'm going to play defense. Because for the Lakers, I mean, he just didn't want to play defense. And you're like, he's such a great athlete. But I watched him the other night. He's completely disruptive. He's like the guy in the YMCA you don't want guarding you. It's like, dude, you're sweating all over me. He's in your grill. You're just like, he's just unconventional, and he's just going 1,000 miles an hour. And it's like, those guys. I mean, oh, God, it's just relentless. And KD's just, Patrick Beverley did that before a couple years ago. Patrick Beverley got into, remember when KD was a Warrior, and Patrick Beverley, the first couple of games, just like, and KD's like, you know who I am. You know who I am. Then he came out and averaged 41 for the rest of the series. But you can get in KD for a game or two, and you can get him out of his rhythm. He'll come back and be fine.
Oh, yeah. I for the record, everything I said, Kawhi's been great. Russ has been great. KD is the best player in this series. He's going to close the deal.